Hi,
Already have
Jocelyn.
fans. Hi,
That's
Jenny.
cool.
How are you?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yes. Thanks for having me here.
How's California life?
California life is good. I mean, the weather is very nice, but we really only go out to walk the dog. So we do errands once a week. Friday is our go out on the town day. So
Okay.
Los Angeles seems to be very strict.
Yeah.
Or they keep extending Los Angeles.
Yeah, they're very strict. They just said masks everywhere outside because for a while it was like only if you go into a store.
Yeah.
But now because everyone's going to the beach and no one's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
It's just like not a hard thing to do. I don't know why people. I mean, it's annoying, but
yeah, it is annoying. But I mean, everybody stay safe. What's the problem with that?
I know, exactly.
I don't
exactly.
Jenny, someone says your hair is amazing.
Oh.
Just had to throw that out there. I agree.
It is. Has it?
Yeah.
The hair, the bookshelf. Someone said the mixture of it.
I did dye my hair for the book, for my author photo, because I have always wanted to dye my hair a color. And my mom, of course, very strict Korean mom, was like, no. So finally, I'm like, I'm way too old to have to like still listen to my mom about such things. I'm like, I'm going to do it. It's my first young adult novel. But it's kind of a lot of people were dyeing their hair now. It was like in the September Vogue, which I showed her the picture of. And then my mom offered me $500 not to do it.
Oh my gosh. What was her reaction when she saw your hair?
Well, I did it anyway, and I didn't tell her. And then I saw her at Christmas.
With no warning?
No warning. I mean, she knew I was thinking about it, but I was like, it's better to spring it on her, probably. And so I met her at an airport. We went to South Carolina for like Christmas and then my brother's family all came in. And she just like looked at me and she's like, your hair. And I was like, yes. And she's like, it's so purple. And I'm like, yes. And then nothing. So that means she does not like it. And then she's never spoken about it since. That's how I know.
Well, you can tell her the teens love it. So that's all that matters. It's part of your job. So welcome.
Thank you.
We're here. We're live.
Yes.
For the second time in Quar with the wonderful Jenny Lee.
Hi,
so I'm Ebony from Epic Reads.
I'm Karah from Belletrist.
And we're here with a special
the guest.
Jenny. Yes, we're here for a special Why Not YA live where we talk to today's powerhouse YA authors. And we have the wonderful Jenny Lee here, who's the author of Anna Kay. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
So because we're coming to you all live, we want to make sure we answer your questions. So make sure to drop them in the comments and we'll get to them as we continue this discussion. So yeah, thanks again.
And the cover is behind Ebony. It's a beautiful cover with one of my favorite fonts.
I want to make sure I get it in the frame. I know,
it's very
so pretty.
70s.
Yeah.
It's like feminist 70s. That's the vibe that I got.
Right, Valley of the Dolls, kind of.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, yes, exactly. Valley of the Dolls. That's right.
Yeah.
So just for people who, haven't read the book or haven't heard of it, who might be watching, can you give, it's multi-character, but can you give a general summary of what the book is about?
Sure. Anna Kay is a reimagining of Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. But this one takes place in modern day, and it's New York City, Greenwich, Connecticut, mainly private school kids. I mean, there's a couple kids, like there's a main character who is a public school who goes to Stuyvesant. Other than that, it mainly takes place in that world.
So we had a few questions for you from fans. We did basically a call out on Epic Reads and asked fans to ask questions. And Meryl Khalid 13 asked, of all the classics out there, what attracted you to recreate this one?
It's funny. I didn't really have the idea first of like, I want to do a reimagining. Obviously, I've heard of them. I mean, everyone does Jane Austen and Shakespeare, so I've seen them. But with this one, I guess it pretty much happened organically because Anna Karenina is one of my favorite books of all time. I read it when I was a teenager. When I was grounded. I got grounded. It was a really bad one, so I couldn't do anything. And my older sister was at Brown University, and she sent me a copy of Anna Karenina after taking Russian Lit. And she's like, everyone makes mistakes. She had it worse than you. So I was like, oh, okay. Then I was like, 800 pages, forget that. But then basically I had no choice. So I read it, and I don't know, I devoured it. So I loved it. And then I reread it probably after my first marriage, like when I was 30. And it was so much just different. I mean, I just really could understand the scope of how difficult and amazing this book was to write and all the characters. And then I saw the movie. I guess how I got my ideas, I saw the movie in 2012 with Keira Knightley, the Jonah Hill adaptation, and in New York City at the Ziegfeld. So sad that it's gone. But I saw it in New York, and I walked down. I was like, it's really a movie about first time of ever really being in love, that crazy love where it just hits you, and you know, it's just this awakening sort of thing. And we're talking about the tragic, with my mom, the tragic elements of it. And I was like, this would be a great young adult novel. Because, like, if you that crazy crash. And so I honestly wrote, I had a book agent at the time, and I wrote her, I was like, what about a young adult, you know, retelling of Anna? 2012, and I tried a couple times, but I was in Los Angeles working in TV, and I didn't have that much time for like writing, and I mean book writing. And then I don't know, 2015, it just happened. I was like, I'm going to do it now, finally.
So it's interesting because in the author's note, you sort of talk about your mom and you watching that movie, and your mom is Korean, and she talked to you about not being afforded the same status in society like men, and how you realize not much has changed since the original Anna Kay. And so it reminded me of the scene in the book where Anna Kay visits her grandmother, her father's mom, and gets upset because she sort of says similar things. And like her father is on her side, but then later on her mom sort of like reprimands her for telling her father essentially because he confronted his mom about what was said to Anna Kay. So I'm just curious, were you inspired to write that scene based on that conversation that you had with your mom?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it was very important to me. I was always going to make and the main character half Korean. I'm full, and my mom, you know, my parents immigrated like however many years ago. But I was born in Tennessee, in Nashville, Tennessee. But I do think my parents raised me to be very Korean. Do you know what I mean? Like inside the house, it was just very cultural, very extremely strict. Everything you've heard of, like the Tiger Mom thing, that was kind of basically how I grew up. And so, you know, my mom actually, she's not going to watch this, so it's fine. My mom really likes men better. It's crazy. I mean, she really thinks because she was raised that way that men are afforded better things. And it's still kind of like that in Korea, the patriarch. I mean, even though it's changed a lot, but it's still pretty similar that you kind of have to defer to men. And so I butt heads with my mom a lot on this because I am very much a feminist and very much female power. So when we were talking about it, you know, Anna Karenina, because, you know, she makes that one big mistake, which is cheating on her husband as a married woman. But in the 1800s in Russia, you know, that's a huge mistake. Her entire life got destroyed by that one. So for me, it was so important when doing a modern adaptation. I always knew I was going to probably change the ending, but I was like, I wanted to show people that teenagers and girls especially, you can make one mistake or something bad can happen to you and it doesn't matter. Like you can just move on. I've made plenty of mistakes, you know, and you can just grow from them and learn from them, and it doesn't define you. You don't have to let something like that one mistake isn't going to ruin your life, basically.
That's so interesting, and it's so true. I feel like it is a lot like that in a lot of sort of like families that have older, I don't know, like Southern families or first gen families. Men are sort of like the golden child. Women are supposed to act a certain way, comport themselves in a certain way. So I really like that you played with the gender roles, like with the mom, with Anna Kay, who's like this, you know, perfect child, this perfect girl in this like social world. Because it is true, like we all make mistakes, and as teenagers, you should feel okay about like having to learn and mess up and learn again.
Right. Exactly.
And I think it also, sorry. I was going to say, it also just plays into sort of historically, like earning power, like who's able to earn money, and, you know, let's do everything we can to support the person that's bringing money to the family. And, you know, it's, I mean, obviously, yeah, things have changed in the West. I mean, things have changed throughout the world, but I do still think there is a lot to be done.
Yes.
So one of the other questions that Cute Shwari asked, which is I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was kind of connected to what you said a little earlier, but like what was it like rewriting a classic? And I guess one thing that I'd add is like, did you feel really like you were rewriting something, or that you were taking elements of this classic novel and sort of infusing your own story into it? I'm curious.
I definitely do not feel like I was like, the intention was to rewrite Anna Karenina. And I have to say, when I was thinking about when I was doing it, every attempt that I made since 2012, I was really trying to change up the structure and like have a modern day story and maybe flashbacks. And, you know, I was trying to find my own spin on it. The problem is that book is so big. There's so many characters. It was just getting unwieldy. Nothing was working. So when I figured it out in 2017 of how to do it, I was like, oh, I just have to do the plot as is, basically. So I really did start it out that way, but it was never, I mean, I really think Anna Karenina is one of the best books of all time, right? It's classic literature. So I was never trying to be like, oh, I'm going to rewrite my own literary.
Right.
It's been done. So in my version, I was like, oh, I want it to be kind of a soapy, fun. It wasn't really a satire in any way, but it was like a soapy, fun, frothy version of it because it's such a great love story. And because I was making it, you know, I made the choice to make them very over the top wealthy teenagers in New York. And so it was just like those things were planned. So to me, the first part of the book, because mine is 3 parts, that sticks very closely to the beginning of Anna Karenina, just like plot-wise, because I really wanted to do that. And then I let the characters pretty much take a life of their own, and then it starts to deviate. But I had there's definitely Easter eggs if you've read Anna Karenina that you can find within and be like, oh, that was kind of a nod to the original. So I did that on purpose.
I think it's why I think some of our most beloved, I was talking about this yesterday, actually, like, some of our most beloved like movie classics of the last 30 years are, you know, rooted in, you know, what we'd call the classics, but like give a contemporary spin to these age-old themes. And I never feel like they're, including Anna K, I don't feel like they're rewrites so much as like looking at what modern classics had to say about love and relationships and, you know, coming of age, and just making it feel contemporary, which is what every sort of generation of writers do. It's like, there's really like 5 things you can write about. It's like love, death, and sex and money and work, you know? So it's like, I do think that like the reason that the classics are so sort of ripe for interpretation is because they deal with such like fundamental issues of the, you know, sort of young adult life a lot of the time.
You know what I recently learned? Romeo and Juliet, when Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, he borrowed the story from someone else. Someone else had written this story in 2 other versions. So he was adapting Romeo and Juliet for the stage. And then, you know, he added like obviously Mercurio and some like major plot points from the original story. But I found that I was like, oh, so Shakespeare did it. It's totally
Nothing is original. Nothing's original.
It's not. And that is really a really good point about just like the characters, how there's so many characters in this book. And I just felt like you did. It's interesting to know, like the first part was you kept it sort of in the same vein, and then you just kind of let the characters fly. You can really see that because they were so vivid. You have like, of course, Anna Kay, who's like the problem solver, who's being rebellious, quote unquote. You have Stephen, who's like a train wreck, but so sincere. You know, you have Kimmy, who's like literally trying to figure herself out after ice skating. And so, I mean, I could just keep going, but how were you able to keep up with like writing them in the story and making sure they, like, at what point when you let them fly, did you like say, okay, their stories are going to stay unique in these ways? Like, how did you keep them like unique and separate and feeling like all these characters are connected, but they're also distinct?
I'm definitely, I mean, I learned this term, I think through Instagram, this pantser versus a plotter. Like, what are you? I don't know what that means. But now I do. So pantser is a fly by the seat of your pants versus like doing an outline. And honestly, I never really outline. I've learned to in TV writing, you have no choice. They make you do an outline. So, but on this book, because I had certain markers from the original, I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to need. I know where I'm going to get to at the end. So that kind of helped me. But with the characters like Kimmy in particular, So in the original Anna Karenina, that's the Kitty character. She does get depressed over love. She does go to a sanitarium in Germany to get better, where she has adventures and gets, but in my version, she does the same thing where she goes to a wellness center after her heart is broken, Vronsky. But to make her modern, it just seemed right that I was like, she's going to get angry in modern day. Like absorbs exactly what happened to her, and that she kind of got dismissed after, losing her virginity to a guy that she thought she was madly in love with, and he just kind of, tossed her aside. I really wanted to give her a voice. I wanted her to be angry, which she was. Yeah. And I wanted her to have a chance, because in modern day, don't you always wish that you could have go tell off that guy that did you, and you're like, oh, if only I could do it. So that was like a big moment where I was like, oh, I'm going to give, especially the female characters, a chance to have their own voice. Same thing with Lolly, because her older sister was like the shallow girl that everyone knows with the friends and only cares about like who she is and what people think of her. And I really wanted to make sure, especially with the women, though I tried to do it with all of the characters, their own emotional arc, so that by the end you would have a journey and like be a little bit changed. Because I think in your teen years, everyone you meet has a chance to change your life. You know what I mean? You can fall in with the bad crowd or the good crowd. And I just feel like that's so interesting to me about teenagers and being just young. Every moment or every relationship really can profoundly change you.
And I like how you mentioned Kimmy versus Lolly, because Lolly, she forgave Stephen, which is also a very big deal. And I think that sometimes society will make you feel like there's shame in doing that. And I like that you have these two sisters who decided to, go in different directions with their decision. And both of those decisions were okay. And they both came around at the end and sort of found themselves. And Lolly thanked Anna for like helping her come to a decision that was best for her, So I think it just shows that feminism doesn't necessarily have to mean one thing, or like your decisions as a woman doesn't necessarily have to mean you have to do one thing or another in order to be complete or to be a better woman, or, any of those things. So just a reminder, everybody, make sure to put your questions in the comments and we will get to them.
There's someone who said, oh my God, you wrote this without an outline? Amazing. But going back to sort of, and thank you so much for, putting the character. I always appreciate a novel that has character breakdowns in the front of the book, because I always refer back. And it's because otherwise I'm always writing in the margins of my books to remember, sort of who's what. And I love multi-character stories. It's just, I really appreciated that. And, one of the things that it's very easy to notice when reading the book is that you do have, it's a wellspring of representation, but it doesn't feel like compulsory or clunky. And, that's both from different backgrounds. And then, people who have a sort of variety of struggles that feel very authentic to like being a teenager, also a teenager. I relate to this, but being a teenager who's overexposed in New York City, who like has a lot of feelings and knows all the names of them because they've been, prescribed and pathologized, etc. So, I guess my question is, when you were writing this story, how much kind of came very organically to like the way that you were inventing these characters, and, how much of it was a real, I guess, choice at the beginning to properly represent, the diversity that exists in New York City, but also the sort of like the diverse pathologies that are existing in New York City and in Greenwich, Connecticut. Right.
Well, one of the shows, one of my first TV experiences out here was on the Disney Channel show Shake It Up with Belletrist and Zendaya.
Oh my God.
Zendaya's first show. So I wrote on that for 3 seasons. I was a baby writer. And here's, yes, Disney can be the giant evil monolith empire. But at the same time, one of the things that I really appreciated that I learned is that every show has to be cast, basically multicultural, like, with a lot of representation. But they didn't want you to comment on it because it was Disney. We weren't talking about race and whatnot. But I really did understand. And then I wrote 2 middle grade books during my time there that children do need to see what they see on TV. You know what I mean? So if you see yourself, then you're like represented. It's just like a big deal. You're not like the Asian friend or like the token, multicultural friend, basically, of like a cast of white characters. So I really didn't want to comment comment on it in general. Like, I grew up in Tennessee. We were the only Asian family in our town, like small town Tennessee. My father was a doctor. I would go to Walmart to buy tampons and everything. They'd be like, "Oh, you're Dr. Lee's daughter, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Such a weird microscope to be living under, basically. And so when I got to New York City, it was so refreshing to just be on the subway and see so many different people. And I don't think I ever realized, yes, there was definitely racism, but I don't know. I always kind of shrugged it off. I'm like happy-go-lucky, like chatty person. So I was like, if they're saying mean things to me, they're stupid. I just didn't really care. But getting to New York, I realized I sort of relaxed into it. Like, oh, we're all a part of this. I don't feel like I was singled out in any way. So that I found very interesting. Because when I moved to Los Angeles, I was surprised. It's a little bit, a lot of the Koreans live in Koreatown. It's like a lot of, on the West Side, it is very white. I mean, it's interesting that it's not as mixed as you would think it is for a major metropolitan city like New York. So. Yeah.
And in terms of like, bringing in storylines that deal with, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, addiction, like, right. I don't know, Ebony, if you agree with this, but like the first time I had a panic attack, I had no idea what was going on. Like, I had not read about it and I read a lot of YA. I also read a lot of adult novels as a teenager. Like, it just was not, and I know this has changed generally because opinions about like therapy and mental health have changed in the past 15 years, but like, I don't know. I thought it was like a very powerful thing to just like name a panic attack really at the beginning of the novel, like panic disorder at the beginning of a novel. And just like, that's just something that especially a male character possesses. Right. And I wonder if that's just like who you are and the stuff you talk about. And so you infused it into your writing, or if like that was a very conscious choice.
A little bit of both. For me, I have my older sister who I mentioned earlier. She actually suffered from mental issues that like presented itself like in college. So in terms of a family, I understand it twofold. In an Asian family, that's extremely taboo.
Yeah.
There's my dog. She's sneaking. So it was that was like a taboo topic. And I don't think necessarily my parents, handled it necessarily so well culturally. It's just like very much there's a shame factor. So, obviously it's something that's very close to my heart that I understand a lot about like what it can do in a family. And I just really wanted to present it accurately because there were just times in your life, especially I think as a teenager, when, you can really be depressed situationally or chemically and just, it doesn't mean that you're depressive.
Right.
Or that there's something wrong with you, So I just wanted to, again, normalize it basically. Since I had such a big cast of characters, it's just like, this is just the world. I'm always telling my friends, I'm like, oh, out of 10 of us, someone's going to have X, someone's going to be a weird deviant.
Exactly.
Statistics. So I think that's really kind of how I approached it with Annika. I didn't necessarily be like, oh, she's going to be like XYZ.
Right.
When Kimmy got depressed, I wanted her, she was in therapy and was offered the tools from like a therapist of like how she should process her feelings and not think of things in one way or another. And it's probably, I've been in therapy obviously. And so I've learned, some tools. So I wanted to kind of give that resource out, but not in like a preachy way. It's
no, I think it's super valuable.
I agree. Especially if teens are feeling like they're experiencing these feelings and they don't know how to, they don't know how to confront them. They don't necessarily know what they are. And they might have their parents who are sort of like looking down on them or, yelling at them or asking them what's wrong or, doing all these things and not really like piecing together what could really be the culprit. So I think it's a nice way. That's what reading does, right? You sort of like, you can find yourself in some of these books. You can sort of recognize what problems lie with these characters that might be similar to yours. And I think that's really important when you're literally just trying to figure yourself out.
Totally.
Okay, so I read that your husband told you the best time to write a great love story is when you're living one. This story is obviously so tragic. It's so tragic, but it's really, that's what you really did. You pulled us in with this sort of forbidden love. Do you think you would have been able to write Anna Kay if you weren't in love, as your husband says?
I think I would have been able to. I think the issue was what was great for me at my age, not being a teenager at all, is that I was able to remember channeling like that crazy, the beginning of any love affair. You're just, so into the guy and, you know, hopefully he's into you, or kind of a little bit obsessed. And, you know, have you heard of this idea, like a puppy t-shirt, like when you get a new puppy, you like wear it and then you put it with the puppy and it smells like them. And so when I met him, he lived in Brooklyn and I lived in Los Angeles. So we had a long distance relationship.
Okay.
Before he left, I was like, I need a puppy shirt that would smell like him. So he would wear like a shirt to bed at night too, and I would keep it. And it's just like, that's the thing.
That's so funny. I actually used to do the same thing.
I think I have friends that do that.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
I want to remember that. And so my husband, I met him 5 years ago, but I had been married before. And this was like, it was not like it's a late in life love affair, but a little bit in that sense where I was like, oh, I'm now old enough to know you really have to hold on to that beginning part when it's so remember what these feelings are like. And, you know, I'm very ambitious with my TV career. And it was like a year where I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just like relax a little about my career and really enjoy this like time of being like, in again. And so that I think really did help me in the book to kind of channel those like obsessive feelings. I think why I loved Anna Karenina so much is that, yes, she became obviously super into him, but he was obsessed with her from the start too. So that is very romantic notion. Why does it always have to be the girl who's so hung up?
Exactly.
On
Yeah.
Changed his whole personality because he met her, like the girl. So
Right.
it's just like, you're like, oh, it's amazing. So.
Totally. I'm just laughing because I was thinking about something specific. The good news for people who have read Anna Kay and love it is that it's being turned into a TV series for HBO Max, which I guess I can HBO Max is launching, I think, in a few days, right?
Yeah, I think so. March 20th.
And Gossip Girl's also going to be on HBO Max, the new reboot. And I'm wearing a shirt that says the book was better. But I do think that in matters of TV, sometimes the shows can be very good. Right. Oh, thank you. Someone said I have good hair. Thank you. But that's what my shirt says. And this shirt, as a little plug, because Ebony and I are influencers, is a ModCloth shirt that I love.
They're mine.
And we're
shout out to ModCloth.
And so is Ebony's. And I really like this shirt. I like the sentiment on it. Yeah. I wouldn't mind walking down the street with this. My dad, who you know, used to say, "Don't wear a shirt with a person's face on it who you can't explain to a friend." And so he never let me. As a kid, I could never wear like a cool Che Guevara shirt because he was like, "You don't know who that is. You can't wear that shirt." And I was like, "But Dad, everybody wears Che shirt." You know, that was like very big. Yeah. Is there anything you can tell us about the show? Anything you can share?
I can share that it is currently in development with HBO Max. I mean, I had a very fun Hollywood experience that as soon as I sold the book in September 2017, there were immediately so many calls from producers, like movie producers and
congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was super, and it just flooded into like the agency. And I immediately was like, it definitely needs to be a TV show, not a movie. So I didn't any movie producers, because to me, all the versions of Anna Karenina, I've seen every single movie adaptation, they never really work because the book's 850 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
Down to 2.5 hours. Everyone just shrinks it down to the Anna and Vronsky story, which is the juicy part. But I think without all the other love relationships, the whole tapestry of it working together, that's what made this novel so incredible. It was just such a big, epic story of so many different types of love. So that's really what I wanted, to do as well. And so to do it, you need like 10 episodes. So, I mean, I really did think that like the Coachella would be the penultimate episode.
Oh, right? Yes.
It sort of worked out that way, which is, I mean, probably that is what helped me like being a pantser, because I'd worked in TV for 10 years. So I knew how to structure out, a season. I mean, this season one of a show. So that was always kind of the intention. It was supposed to be a book first for sure, but I was definitely like, I want to sell this as a, as a, so.
And are you writing it? Are you the creator?
Yeah, I am the creator.
Yes.
Also very exciting. That doesn't always happen.
I know, it's so exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So that was also a great thing. Because for me, since I've been like, co-EP level or the number 2 on a couple of shows, I now could show run this. If I was like a baby TV writer and I sold this, they would have taken it away from me. And, I would have like a little bit of influence, but it's just not the same. So now I really have creative control, which is amazing. I mean, I learned an interesting thing from Jenny Han about this experience. And I met her once, like at a party, but I mean, we're not friends or anything, but I was reading during the process. It was like when I was at a producer's meeting, like there's a variety or something, and they were interviewing her about how To All the Boys and how she went through the process of picking a producer. And she had the power, right? In the New York, her book was already a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
So at that point, everyone wanted was they were chasing her after, you know, they wanted this option. And everyone was saying colorblind casting, which means the girl doesn't have to be Asian, even though you wrote about an Asian character. It depends on whoever casting, you know, we want to cast. That's how it'll be. And she said no. She was like, she went with the producer who was like, I'm going to keep her, you know, Korean or Korean American. And so I really respected that. And I really learned something from it, like right at the perfect time. Because I really, a lot of my other TV projects that I'd done, that kept happening to me, where I would write maybe something about my life and I put her, the main character, as a Korean American woman if it was inspired by my life. And then I would be told that like, maybe you should take that out and just like, let's leave it for colorblind casting. So, you know, luckily with this one, the only person I thought of that wasn't Korean when I was writing Anna Kay was Zendaya. Cause I was like, oh, she's so beautiful. She seems like such an Anna Kay to me. She's, you know, half black. That would be a good, you know, that's the only got Euphoria. So I was like, okay, well that's out. But I definitely.
But her style, definitely Anna Kay. I totally agree.
Yeah, totally. So then I was like, oh, so then, you know, it was very important for me, obviously, to keep her half Korean.
Yeah, I agree about the TV show. I was so excited when I saw that because there's so like the whole concept of the book. There's so many love affairs. Like it's just, it couldn't be anything but a TV show. We are going to get into a Q&A. So we have some questions from Instagram, but we actually have a lot of Facebook questions and we want to make sure that for everyone tuning in, we get to them first. So let's pop up our first question. Okay, I have one question. Was it not hard for you to adopt the name of an already great book? Was it not hard for you to be judged by that?
Yes, it was difficult. And I personally was like, oh, who do I think I am to like attempt this sort of, you know, I mean, again, it really wasn't a rewrite. It was a reimagining. So, because I think this book is perfect. So I wasn't even going for that level of like literary magnificence. It just had a different take on it. I was wondering whether like librarians or certain people, like I would get a little bit of like pushback, but I really haven't. I'm surprised, like not even on, you know, on Instagram. A lot of people, what is a little disheartening is how many people are like, oh, I never heard of this other book. And I'm like, really? You've never heard of Anna Karenina? Or they didn't know the ending of that book.
Right.
I keep thinking if, you know, there are teenage girls or women out there who've read Anna Kay and really loved it, that they would like level up basically and then read the original. Cause I would love that. I think that's a book that needs to be read. It's just so big. I think it's daunting for people to think about.
Yeah,
like,
most definitely.
An 800 pager, but it's worth it, everyone. You should read it.
Do we have another question? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
You want to read that one?
Who was the easiest character to reimagine in Anna Kay, and who is the hardest?
The easiest character, probably the easiest character for me was Anna as the title character. I mean, I did understand her feelings the most, or she, you know, I focused on her, so I didn't really have that much of an issue. I mean, I did make her half Korean. One of the reasons is my brother is married to, I say, a blonde instead of a white woman. So he has
that's a good way. That's a good way to refer to a white woman. A blonde.
Yeah, my Korean brother married a blonde. So he has these 3 gorgeous kids. But like honestly, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago when I was writing. He lives in a suburb outside of Philadelphia, which just happens to be very white, I think. And he was saying, I really think you have to write about these half Asian kids so that my kids have something, know that they can be the main character of a book or of a story. Like that's like something that's important. He's like, I just think it's, you know, what we were talking about earlier about representation. So that was also kind of why I wanted to do with like Anna Kay. So that's why, I mean, I can channel that and some of their experiences. In terms of who was the hardest character to write, I think Stephen was interesting to me because I needed someone to be that, not stereotypical, but like a little bit of that elitist rich kid kind of were like, ugh, you've seen that guy before. Because we are dealing with a level of wealth that most people, I certainly have never really experienced. So you know that a lot of them are, can I say assholes?
Yeah.
Guys. A lot of them were like assholes. So I really needed to show that at the beginning. And again, but I wanted to give him an arc where by meeting Dustin, that completely is going to change his entire life.
Yeah.
Like Dustin, who is like a good guy, the moral center, ethically correct, very smart. That was one of my favorite relationships in the book. It's like this bromance between these two very different boys, because in the beginning Dustin's very much like, I'm gonna hate him, he's a 1%, he's against everything that I'm a part of, like there's no way we'll be friends. And then it did, you can find commonalities between people.
And also the relationship between Stephen and Anna, it's just like he's such a protective brother and so endearing. I found that to be really sweet too. I love their relationship. That actually made me also like Stephen a lot more. I'm like, okay, I can get into him.
Yeah, he could be good in one area of his life, but then you can still be like, people are very multifaceted.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Very,
right.
Yes. Absolutely. Do we? We have another question.
Yes. What was your writing routine like? Do you set a daily goal? What's the hardest part of the process for you?
Writing Anna Kay was kind of a dream. I want to tell you, when I draft, I only go forward. I do not like go back and ache over like what I wrote. I write very quickly. I always have. And also in TV, you learn not to be precious about your pages. So I just completely went forward. I think I drafted it in like 7 weeks. I want to tell you.
Wow.
It was crazy. Just that first messy, terrible draft. And it was interesting. Part one, at first I was kind of going for a more formal sort of speak omniscient narrator, but I don't know, it just sounded so formal. And I was like, oh, but kids aren't writing that way. Is that a certain style? And as I kept going, but I still didn't go back and fix it. But as I kept going by part 2 and 3, I was like, oh, I know who all these characters are. This is how they talk. And then I had to go back and fix it for the first one. So this was like divine inspiration on this book to be able to finish it, to write it so fast.
Wow.
Basically. I mean, it was, again, like it was 529 pages and 185,000 words. Like,
jeez.
Okay, so I was amazed how realistic the drug-fueled party scenes were. Also coming from so good job, Jenny. Also coming from a very conservative Korean family, I was pleasantly surprised that the characters were very Americanized and accurately young adults in those experiences. Where did you get the inspiration for this? Oh,
I think that, yes, very conservative. I think because my parents were so strict, I was a little bit, as the youngest, a wild child. And I mean, the time when I got grounded, I got caught sneaking out, borrowing the family car at the age of 15 without a license, and I got busted. So I think I don't know, I feel like it's so interesting. Sometimes I would talk to some friends who had teenagers, and I would talk about the drug use, and I'm amazed by how many parents are like, oh yeah, my kid's enter drugs. I'm like, okay, maybe you have that one kid that's not experimenting.
Yeah.
But they've definitely seen it or they've been around it. And not that all teenagers lie, but all teenagers lie. I mean, it's just like,
that's right.
You do it for sport almost, because you can. You just like say what you want. You're never going to confess. It's like the secret life of a teenager. So I really wanted to be very careful, especially with kids who had this access to like money and clubs and things that were so much more adult than they normally would.
Exactly.
Definitely.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
I can't believe you grew up in Tennessee. How did you nail? I'm sorry. I'm like going off book, but it's just like how you really. I mean, besides the names, which are real names of schools, and my girlfriend went to GA actually, but she's gonna kill me for saying that. I just thought you really captured this thing about being a teenager in New York City, which is you're a mini adult, and so like you think that you can get away with things that you can't because you're still a teenager ultimately. And like, that's kind of universal, I just wanted to comment on that. I thought you really nailed it.
And I think sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I arrived in New York City for college at 18. So I was a teenager there. And I remember just being like mesmerized by the city and the amount of people. And that was back in the days when McDonald's used styrofoam containers. And there's that McDonald's on Broadway, like, right, after 8 or whatever. I walked by and the trash was on the curb and it was like higher than I was. And I would just remember that as like a thing of like, this is this crazy giant city of like trash and interesting people. And, you know, so I mean, I think I probably channeled a lot of my 20s because I worked in book publishing and they were still doing book parties then. And we partied. We had a lot of fun.
I have to say, I don't think we get the benefits of that in book publishing.
There's no money left. That's why.
Yeah, there's no money. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think for teenagers who didn't grow up in New York, like I didn't grow up in New York, I grew up in Detroit, but just like watching it on TV or reading books that sort of had that like lush lifestyle that you're like, oh, this is like the dream teenager situation. I think there's something about that that's like really intriguing too. So we have one more question from Facebook, and then we have a few more from our Instagram followers, and then we have a special treat for everyone. So what's the next question? Did you always want to work in TV and be an author?
Interesting story. Okay, so I went to NYU for Tisch dramatic writing, which is like TV and stage. So I grew up in Tennessee, small town, I honestly wanted to write short stories and novels. I've always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. I won a couple like short story contests that were local, and NYU found me basically from this the literary cavalcade, that national scholastic the Scholastic magazine, I guess, that went out to all teenagers. So I placed in that contest and I got a letter from NYU saying, hey, think about the dramatic writing program. I had never heard of NYU as a good
wow.
Really? Wow.
No Ivy League. There was just no other option. Like it was already, my brother went to Harvard, my sister went to Brown. I was supposed to go to UPenn because they didn't think I could get into Harvard. It was just all planned already for me. And then I got this thing about an art school and I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. So I applied secretly. My mom knew, but we didn't tell my dad early. And then I got in. And then we told my dad then, I was like, this is where I want to go. And he is like, no, I'm not paying that amount of money for a private education school I have never heard of.
It's not like some indie school. It's NYU.
I know. I think NYU at that time, the College of Arts and Sciences, was like ranked 45 in the 40s.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So not ever going to happen. So we had a standoff, and I was like, well, I'm not going to apply. I'm not sending in an application. Let's see what happens. And that was probably maybe one of my most obstinate and bravest decisions as a teenager ever made, because I had no idea how it would end. And at the end, he was like, fine, you can go, but you can't see the school. Like, I'd never been to New York. They dropped me off like in my dorm with luggage. It wasn't Felicity. They didn't decorate my room and set me all up. It was like, bye, good luck to you. And I was like, oh my God. It was a little, I will say that first week was pretty stressful. I mean, because it was only the Tisch kids. So it was all these art students, and we were there early. And everyone's like, so dramatic, and I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to be an actor. And I was like, oh my God, I made a huge mistake. I'm just not like that. Like, I wasn't very, and it's just something I've always wanted to do, right? But I wasn't like, my roommate was like, I'm going to write on 90210. Like, I'm going to be the next Woody Allen, she told me. And she was so confident, and it like really freaked me out. So I eventually, in my sophomore year, I was like, I don't want to write for TV or movies. I wanted to write stage plays. And so I switched out of the program and I didn't finish Tisch. And so it's kind of funny to me that in the end, I ended up back in TV. So
it is such a precocious like endeavor to be, even now it's so inside baseball or industry speak to be like, I want to be a TV writer when I grow up. But I guess TV is now so popular. It is more like aspiring to be a film director, which I think was more common at the time. Like,
and also with social media, you're able to find these writers and these producers. I don't know if that producers online, and you weren't able to do that before. And so it was like with publishing. I didn't realize that was a career until I met someone who was a part of it, and I was just like, oh, I have to do this. So social media really allows you to sort of like peel behind the curtains and see like who's doing the behind the scenes cool stuff too.
Well, now like Shonda Rhimes is famous.
Exactly.
Like
She's
Shonda
famous
Rhimes
for writing. Exactly.
So it's a very different world, I guess.
Karah, do you have any Instagram questions that you
I
want
do.
to call out?
I do. Well, I like this question a lot. There's a few very good questions I'm looking through, but I'm curious. Maddie Girl 27 and I wonder if you've ever thought of this, asked what's your favorite thing about being a writer? And I assume, she said an author. So I guess not a TV writer. What's your favorite thing about being an author?
Let me think. I think, in terms of comparison, TV writing, which I know I'm deviating from the question a little, TV writing is very much a group effort. Like I've only comedies so far. And the writer's room, it's like 10 people sitting around, and I have jokes or lines in every episode of TV, even though my name, wasn't the episode that I wrote on, which is a great collaborative thing, because I think I'm by nature a social person. So what I found very hard when I started writing books is that just the isolation and the solitary, confinement of it. And I was like, I need to see other people. So TV really did help that basically for me. So I was like, oh, I'm going to just be a TV writer then and not do books anymore. But then I was like, I started to miss the freedom that you get from writing author, which is, this is just how I say it goes. It goes like, I can make up however I want to. I don't have network notes. I don't have like all these people's opinions. It's kind of like my version basically. So that is, I don't know. It's just the freedom to like be able to the story.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I think most people don't appreciate how collaborative TV writing is, even though only 1 or 2 people get the credit for an episode, that like, there's a huge room that you're in.
There's 100 people that made like an episode of Shake It Up, right? I mean, and that's not compared to like a Game of Thrones or like a huge drama. Like Anna Kay as a TV show would be very expensive and very sweeping. So, I mean, I knew I needed really big experienced producers to help me with that. It's not something I was like, oh, I can do this on my own. It's like a huge endeavor to make something to make something great, I think.
Yeah,
totally.
So Kathleen NK asked, which character do you relate to the most?
Which character? Sometimes when authors are like, I'm every character. It's just a version of myself and I was like, really? Is it? But I think that I'm always like, oh, that's not necessarily true. Or people in TV are like, what character do you write for specifically? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. In this particular book, I will say there's like a little bit of Lolly in me, of like the eyelashes and like the makeup and who likes the girly sort of designer things. But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm fully like her. There's definitely a little bit of Kimmy in me of like being a little bit of a fighter and, mouthy and just kind of suspicious of certain things. And then, so I do think there is a little bit of me and kind of I sprinkled in throughout the characters basically, but not all of them. I'm nowhere they reflect fully of me, but that's kind of how I did it.
And then I guess we have to, we want to make sure we have enough time.
Enough time, yeah.
So
I'm very excited.
I am too. So final question. This person didn't realize that this is going to segue into something very special. By Tidros in the Sky with Chocolate. They wanted to know, I know that handle. I was like, I got to make sure I get this right. Are you writing a sequel to Anna Kay? Which is funny that they asked this question because, Jenny, you have a special treat for everyone. So tell us what it is.
Okay. I'm going to show it. I think I'll show it first and then we can talk about it. Let me get it.
Drum roll.
Oh, drum roll. Oh, I should have had my drum machine.
You have a drum machine?
Wait a minute. No, let's just do it. I'll show you later. This is too exciting. Yeah.
It is very exciting. This is the cover reveal of the sequel of Anna Kay.
It's gorgeous.
It's so beautiful.
Yes.
Here, can you push it a little? If you push it forward.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Is that it?
That's it. We can see
it. Looks so good, Anna Kay.
It looks amazing.
When I wrote Anna Kay, there was no plan for a sequel. It was just going to be a one-off book, basically. I got a 2-book deal, but it was Untitled second YA.
Ebony's laughing. She's like, I know about it.
Way too well.
As Flatiron, my amazing publishers, as they were like hearing from the sales team, there was a lot of interest about Anna Kay. And then the TV show sold. They were like, oh, maybe we should think about doing a sequel. And I was like, yes, let's do a sequel because I loved these characters and it was so much fun without really necessarily thinking it through. That I guess. So writing a sequel on a book that like was once based on something, but now is completely my own is interesting. And especially, I guess there is that sophomore slump that everyone talks about. I've never done a sequel. So I didn't know it was this big thing that like everyone's looking at this sequel. So it's a little bit intimidating. My plan with the sequel, I don't think it's giving too much away. It's called Away because it takes place right at the end of the first book. Mm-hmm. Just going to take place in the summer because I was, who doesn't want to see rich kids party in the summer?
Exactly.
Their summer vacations are going to be very different from ours. Living in the city in New York in my 20s and broke, everyone was just like all the people who went to the Hamptons. Like I would go to the Hamptons like once, for Labor Day if I got invited by someone. But in general, I was not living that lifestyle where I was just jetting off to some fabulous place for the whole summer or going abroad and stuff. So, I mean, that's what's been really fun to write about these kids. It's just it's like aspirational for me still.
Yeah.
Some of these places that they're going and, I Google like hotels of like the best hotel.
I was going to say, you should ask your publisher that you need to tell them I'm doing book research. I need to go to the Hamptons.
Absolutely.
That's so amazing. So all the characters are going to be in there. Like all of our favorites are going to be in the sequel. Is there anything else you could tell us? Or
most of all of the favorites I think it is very important to keep the idea that it's still a love story. So I'm going to focus on maybe a first love of a different character who has never been in love before.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
I really wanted to make sure I did that. And also, it's going to be a bisexual character, whether you can figure out who that is. I mean, it's just like, I really am very interested in the first time when they fall in love.
Yeah.
Fall in love in an unexpected way. Because I just think that's romantic and fun. And who
doesn't love a summer romance?
Like, yeah, exactly.
The summer camp romance, Lolly goes to theater camp. So I'll tell you that. So a lot of the characters are in different locations, which has been really fun, but also a little challenging because it's where, I kept trading characters like where they were in the first book, but they were all in New York City. So it was very grounded in one location in Connecticut. But this one with everyone, Beatrice goes to Los Angeles for an internship for the summer. It's a little bit trickier because it like kind of jumps around. So I'm actually still trying to tackle that in the structure, like trying to find a way to really make it cohesive as the first book.
Do we know when it's coming out? Do you know when it's coming out, the book? Or you just have the...
was that coming out in March next year. I was like, oh, it is? Because I haven't even turned it in yet. So
well, people are excited for it. As you
look
can
at
see
this.
People just love it.
No, my favorite was Jana's, who said, what is good about quarantine? This happens.
There it goes.
That's pretty good.
That's perfect. Well, we cannot wait to read it. I am super excited. I know Karah is too. We absolutely
I am. I told like a lot of my adult female friends, like I was like, get Anna K. I was like, get Anna K.
It's so juicy.
That's why we do Why Not YA.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. I have to say through Instagram, because it was a book of the month pick in February, like a huge part of the readership I don't think has been teenagers.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of DMs from a lot of different age women all over the place, basically, which I like.
It's YA does not mean that you have to be a teenager to read it, but some of the best books are YA books.
Honestly. Yeah, they would have. I mean, like Catcher in the Rye would have been considered a young adult.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Or To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, they're like, oh, did you plan? It wasn't a YA specific. I wasn't like, I'm going to write a YA. It was like, these characters are going to be teenagers.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's a young adult novel. Consider.
Yeah. Do you feel like you get to live out your teenage years a little bit writing these characters? Sorry, I interrupted Ebony.
No, it's fine.
A little bit, because it is fun to sort of remember like those, just the wonderment of like how exciting everything is when it's like new and like a first time. Do we have time for one fun story?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We always do.
In my 20s, when I was an assistant in book publishing, I was invited. I think I was like out for drinks. A lot of editorial assistants and agency assistants, like our bosses set us up to like be friends, and so I'm out to drinks with someone, and her boss is this woman, Hilary Bass, who used to be a big shot publisher, publicist for Crown, like Martin Amis and whatnot. She became an agent. So anyway, she's very fabulous, and so we ran into her at like the Monkey Bar or something. And she was like, we got to sit with her and we're hanging out, and she's like, oh, I'm going to this party, you guys should come. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like why you get into publishing. So we go to this party and it's Christmas time. I don't know whose apartment this is. And then I'm like looking around and there are like girls, which is kind of goes into that New Year's Eve party, dressed up in like little Santa suits, and they're holding like martini glasses of red and, of green and red M&Ms. It is Bret Easton Ellis's Christmas party. And I'm like, and then I look out, Molly Ringwald is smoking a cigarette out on the balcony.
Oh my gosh.
And then I did walk in the bathroom and I did see people doing coke, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing I have ever seen. It was just this crazy night. I never was able to like, this was not my crowd, basically.
Yeah. And
I just like loved every second of it. And then afterwards, a group of us ended up at Bill Buford's house, who was he was the literary editor at the New Yorker at the time, the fiction editor. He lived off Gramercy Park, and his girlfriend, who I think he married, maybe was decorating the Christmas tree, and we started playing poker, and it was like Mark Lehner and me, and I stumbled out at like dawn. Like we stayed up all night, and I was like, I never saw any of those people again ever. It was this, but that's like, to me, like perfect New York, right?
Yep.
You can just stumble into an adventure just being outside your door. And that's my favorite part about New York, is that it's just so many people in the street. Anything can happen at any point in time if you're just willing to like go along with it, which I always am like, yes, I'll go, let's do it. So
that's what's great about YA is you get to read people's firsts, and you don't have firsts when you're 30 anymore. Yeah. Well, you do. You have like you start to have different kinds of firsts, but like in YA you get like the love firsts and like the party firsts, and I could read that over and over and over again.
It's also a nice reminder when you read about first love and you're like, oh, and you think of like the first time you fell in love or the first time you were, it's a really good way to like just reconnect and realize what's important. So if you are in a relationship for a long time, you read a story like that and you get happy, and it makes you like appreciate your spouse again, if you didn't have it already, but you know what I mean? It's just that pureness of like first it's just so like wonderful to like read and experience over and over again.
Yeah. Totally. So it's just like a great sort of thing where, because especially with Anna, she thought she was in love. I mean, she did love her boyfriend in the beginning, Alexander, but it wasn't like the love. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die without him love. So
yeah.
Well, where can people find you online, Jenny?
I am on Instagram at Jenny Lee Writes. I have a website at jennyleewrites.com, but on Instagram, I am there. You'll see a lot of pictures of my dog. I'm kind of new to Instagram. I only started for this book to like reach out. And I have to say, I've learned a lot about Bookstagram, and I am amazed at like the community. It's really been incredible to see how many people post pictures of the book. And I was like, wow, people do judge books by their cover, because, I think I got a lot of play because people love this cover.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover.
It's a good way in.
Yeah.
It's a good way in. Just like movies are a good way into the books too. I mean, same thing, even though the book is better. Wait, look, this is my drum machine. And can you show the new cover once more?
Yes.
Wait, let's see if this works. Ready?
You're going to drum roll me in.
Oh, this is just...
Are you about to serenade us? Oh,
look. We go. Here it is.
Okay.
Anna K, away.
Oh my God, Karah.
I'm doing this to embarrass Ebony. I'm going to stick to my day job.
Amazing.
I was kind of into it. I know. I was kind of into it. We got to have you do that for every interview now.
I will. I'm going to... Well, thank you. I mean, guys, if you haven't ordered a copy of Anna K yet, I don't know what you're doing. Please order it wherever you get books. And, thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us.
No, had a great time. It's been really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
This was Jenny. I'm Karah from Belletrist.
I'm Ebony from Epic Reads. And thank you for tuning in, all. Thanks.
Yeah. See you on the next Why Not YA. Well, I doubt it'll be in person. Let's be honest.
Oh, Karah.